When you say your former ideology, what is that? What does it mean, Carrie? What does it all mean?
Well, it's funny because this book and the concept you wanted to discuss, white fragility, she talks about ideology, but it's funny because, and I haven't, like you, I haven't read the whole thing. Forgive me. I've read it.
Okay.
But we've been talking about this.
I did read the whole thing.
I know.
Was traumatized enough for everyone.
I know. I was like, I don't want to pay for it. I was trying to read the whole thing in the coffee area of the bookstore. And then finally I said, okay, I just got to buy it, give her the money and take it home. But, you know, she coined this term in 2011 and it's been around. The concept's been around for a while. And like I suspected, I haven't read anything in the book so far that's surprising. She's just recycling the same talking points that they have. But the ideology is a system of belief. It's a way of looking at the world. It's you know, if you're a Christian, your system of belief, you look at the world in a particular way. That you could also maybe call that your ideology. Social justice warriors, it's funny because as much as she criticizes and she calls individualism an ideology, she never comes out and says, at least as far as I've read in the book so far, she hasn't come out and said, my ideology is XYZ. She doesn't say what it is, but she's opposed to individualism, which tells you a little bit about what her ideology is. Social justice ideology is a collectivist ideology, just like white supremacy. It says that the best way to look at the world is to judge people and treat them differently based on what groups they're in. Now, like Marxism used to say, the best way to look at the world is to, as a struggle for wealth between class groups. And that's how you looked at everything. This is a mutated kind of Marxism that says the best way to look at the world is as a struggle for power between identity groups. And so everything they do is they look at everything through this lens, and you're not judged as an individual or treated as an individual. You're judged and treated as a member of what, you know, identity groups you're in, which of those are, they decide are privileged or oppressor, and which of those are, they decide are marginalized or oppressed. And then they have some calculation they can never explain to come up with your unique power figure, like your unique number of, they can't really explain that part.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting about the book is that she actually says that this is a book written for white progressives.
Yes.
And I actually thought that was very telling. It's not written to convince people that aren't already like almost there. It's people that are like on the edge of the collectivist thing and maybe agree with components of it. And it's designed, I think, to kind of push them right over the edge.
Yes. And it's funny you mentioned that part, because the sentence, like right after that, I underlined or I highlighted, because I was like, wow, I agree with her on this sentence. She wrote, I believe that white progressives cause the most daily damage to people of color. Wow. Yes. Now, I would nitpick at that a little bit and say, I don't actually believe that social justice warriors or people who subscribe to social justice ideology are progressive. A lot of them think they are. They call themselves progressives. I thought I was a progressive. I thought I was liberal and progressive. But it's not, I don't think it is a progressive kind of politics. I think it's regressive. So I guess I would change that to say, I believe that white social justice warriors cause the most daily damage to people of color. But I agree with what she's trying to say. Isn't that crazy? I'm like, yeah, I think you do. I think this book causes a lot of problems for people of color, because it is so, it's a duplicitous ideology. It tells you it's about one thing, but it's really about something else. And so you can almost do, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever talk to enough people about the complexities of it, because there's so many things, ways in which it contradicts itself. There's so many ways, it's continually mutating. There's always new things you can't say, or that you must say. It's very concerned with controlling language. It controls people by controlling language. Mm-hmm. It controls thought by controlling language. And so that's why you see them come up with these terms. They coin these terms like white fragility, which itself, I think we've talked about this before, but it's a Kafka trap. It's like, the Salem witch trials. You either confess, in which case you're a witch, or in this case you have white fragility, and then after you confess, by the way, you need to start pointing out other witches. Yeah. You start like calling people, other white people up for the white fragility. If you deny it, any form of trying to argue with it, or to say where's your supporting evidence for this concept, is deemed evidence of your white fragility. That's a circular. There's no way. That's why we call it a Kafka trap, because if you say, well, X, Y, and Z, this is a reason why I do not agree with you, they'll say, aha, you're disagreeing. Evidence.
No, it's true. And the whole book is like, it is an insane book. And I hope to kind of break down at least some parts of it today. And maybe the sections that you haven't read, I can ask you about, because as you said, this is all coming from somewhere, right? She didn't create a lot of this. She's just reiterating it and framing it in different ways. Am I right about that?
Yes, they recycle each other's talking points. They repeat a lot of the same stuff, but they also build on previous concepts that they just put forward as facts. So Peggy Mcintosh was a white woman, a very wealthy white woman, who in 1987 is credited, some people argue it wasn't her, but she's credited with coining the term white privilege. She wrote a much shorter read than this book. It's called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, where she goes through, and it's basically a personal essay. It's like personal observations. There's no sources. There's nothing in there that's scientific, but it's like, this is white privilege. That has become canon in this belief system. And so a person like Robin DiAngelo, when she comes along in 2011 and starts talking about white fragility, then she can build on, you accept white privilege as a fact, and then you just move from there. And so they just continually build on, toxic whiteness. They build on, they're always coining, new terms, which are meant to, I think for the most part, most of their phrases and terms operate to discourage disagreement or debate or discussion. They're there to prevent actual dialogue. And like I said, a lot of this ideology is contradictory. They use a lot of newspeak. It's like Orwellian language, where they say something that means something else. So they will say anti-racist being distinct from not being racist. And they'll tell you this, anti-racist is different from being not racist. Well, how is it different? What they mean by anti-racist is racism. They mean, we want you to treat people differently on the basis of race. We want you to look at people and judge them on the basis of race. That's what they mean by anti-racism. It's just like Antifa, anti-fascism. Right. They behave in fascist ways, but hey, they put an anti in front of it. And it's really kind of clever at branding. I mean, you've seen this in the knitting world. They use the term radical kindness. The social justice people.
Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
What does radical kindness mean? It doesn't mean kindness.
No, it does not mean kindness. It means kindness to people who disagree with me, and shunning and mobbing for everyone else.
Kindness to people who agree, yes, and shunning and mobbing.
Agree, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, we are going to bully you and harass you and try and financially and emotionally harm you because we're being radically kind.
Exactly. Well, and you know what I find so bizarre about the whole thing is, I've actually had conversations with people I know that are on the left that have no idea what I'm doing anymore at all. And they said to me, when all the Antifa stuff was starting, they said, Carlin, Antifa are but a peaceful folk that just oppose fascism. That's almost a direct quote. I'm dramatizing it a little bit, but that is actually almost a direct quote. They're just against fascism. I don't know why you would be against Antifa. And I was like, it's like they can't even if evidence is right in front of them, like some of these videos coming out of Portland right now, where these people are trying to light the courthouse on fire, barricading federal agents in this courthouse and trying to light it on fire. You put this evidence in front of them, they're like, that's not Antifa. Those are white supremacists.
In disguise, right? In
disguise. Secret white supremacists.
Well, I'll be honest, I do think that social justice, people who push social justice ideology, which include Antifa is like the violent arm of this belief system. They do push white supremacy. They're very similar to white supremacists. They believe, just like white supremacists do, that your racial identity is and your sex and all these things. Those are the most important things about you. That you must view the world through a racial lens, and you must treat people differently because of that lens. And then they even believe, they've started pushing these things. I'm sure you saw. The Smithsonian Museum, one of their museums had put out a whole checklist of whiteness. What is whiteness? What is white culture? And it included things like showing up on time, meritocracy, hard work, the nuclear family. And it's so insulting. It's logic, objectivity, reason. To say that those things are part of whiteness and that white people own those things is something that a white supremacist would probably agree with. Like, they overlap in really strange ways, and you almost step back from it and look and say, can't they see how horribly offensive this is and racist to to everyone, because they're necessarily looking at the world through a racist lens, but especially racist towards anyone who's not white. Like, how condescending and is that? What are you trying to put in children's heads?